In today's video, we're going to be talking about the New York subway system. Now, I've been to New York a few times. I went earlier this year in March of 2023, and I plan to go again later on in the year. Now, I used the subway system primarily for traveling around the city, and I found it very useful because there were subway stations everywhere and you could travel large distances quite quickly on the New York subway system. It's very easy to help navigate yourself because if you use Google Maps, for example, and you type in a destination you want to go to, Google Maps will tell you which subway stop you need to get on and which one you need to get off, and it's very well integrated. So getting around, especially using Google Maps, is very easy. In terms of payment for the subway, you can either just tap your bank card or you can buy these Metro cards which you top up with credit and you swipe every time you want to use either the subway or one of the buses. Now, you do have to be careful if you are using one of these Metro cards because I did have situations where I swiped the card but the barrier didn't let me through, and when I checked it did take the fee for using the subway, so essentially sometimes I had to pay twice unless there was a member of staff there where I showed them that I did swipe it and the balance has been deducted. They had a system where they could check when the recent transaction was, and in those situations they just let me through. However, sometimes when there was no one around and that situation happened, I just have to bear the fact that I just paid twice essentially for one subway trip. So that's something just to bear in mind. Now, I want to give my opinion on what I think of the actual subway system itself. I generally think the subway system is relatively safe. Now, I'm comparing it to my own country here in England, so that's my comparison really. I found in New York it was a little bit sketchier. So there were characters who were causing maybe nuisances, but it wasn't really around me, but kind of in the distance I could see rowdy people, some kinds of drugs, and sometimes even at the subway stops at night time or even during the day sometimes you would see a lot of homeless people, some people who seemed to be under the influence of drugs. And it's not to say that that made it unsafe, but there were these characters around which made you feel a little bit on edge. So although when traveling I didn't really encounter any issues, these were situations I did see, and it kind of made me a little bit uneasy and a bit more vigilant as to what's going on around me. And I don't really encounter that when I'm here in the UK, so that's the main difference. I did read a few horror stories and a few opinions on some forums where they said to, be very, very careful. So it wasn't the case where, I had to be on my guard 100% of the time, but I was just a little bit more vigilant and I did see some shady characters. Now, in terms of specific examples which happened, there was one incident where I was on a carriage and there was a lady who was also on the carriage, and when the train started moving I noticed she was just staring at me and she wouldn't look away. And as the subway started moving, she then got up and started walking towards me. When she got close to me, she started preaching about Jesus and saying that she really wants to pray for me, and I kept saying to her, no thank you, I'm okay, thank you. And then she was still quite persistent, saying let me pray for you. In the end I just ignored her and eventually she moved away, but that was one incident which was a bit odd. Again, I haven't really encountered this in the UK, so this is my kind of comparison. So these kind of things do seem to happen in New York but not in the UK. So that was the first incident. Second incident, I was on one of the carriages. It stopped somewhere and someone came on and he was shouting quite loud to everyone in the carriage, not just me. He just walked on and he was shouting, and he was saying to everyone to not look into his bags that he was carrying. He was saying don't ever look into a man's bag, and shouting, seemed to be quite angry. Again, he didn't do anything in particular, but he was just shouting that, which was quite odd. But nothing came of it, but that was just one incident which happened. He just came in quite angry and was telling everyone not to look in his bags or look down. Everyone else on the carriage, they just avoided eye contact with him basically. I think that's the best thing to do when these kinds of people come on the carriage and start causing problems. You just ignore them or just stay out of their way. And the third incident which happened, I guess, which I experienced was there was a man who was listening to music. He seemed to be kind of in his own world. And then the train stopped, and then a lady got off, and he kind of got off afterwards and started shouting at the top of his voice that something about women only want successful men and not average men. He didn't go after the woman, but that woman seemed to have triggered him in some way, and he got off the train and started shouting that, which was a bit strange. The woman was safe and she walked away quite quickly, but he just randomly had an episode, it seemed. So overall, I think generally the New York subway system is quite good. I've mentioned how efficient it is if you're traveling around New York. It's easy to get from place to place. The New York subway is an interesting experience. It depends what city or country you're from. You may experience similar vibes in your own country when you're traveling on public transport. For me, there was a big difference between New York and the UK. I think generally it is quite safe. I think it is good to travel with somebody if you are traveling. And you just have to be vigilant that there may be some odd character who may cause a nuisance, or there may be a homeless person who may come quite close to you to ask you money. You know, there are good things as well. I noticed a lot of performers who are dancing and playing music, so there are nice sides to it as well. It's not I don't mean to paint this video in a bad way and say New York has a terrible subway system. It is still very good, and I mentioned those 3 incidences, but they're not really a big deal because, you know, I wasn't really affected in any way, but it's just something that you'll encounter. So I think it's good to have an awareness of what may happen. It's good to just be safe at all times, travel with someone if you can. I found more of these incidences were happening late night when there were less people around. So it's probably better to travel during the day if you can, when it's busy, because, you know, when there's a lot more people around you, I think there's a bit more protection, because if anything does happen, there's more members of public who are witnesses who may step in. Not that that would ever happen, but it's definitely a safer way to travel. So that's my opinion on the New York subway system. I'd love to hear what you guys think of the subway system in New York. If you've had any experiences or if you can relate to anything I'm saying, let me know in the comment section below. If you have any questions for me at any time, leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you. So thank you very much for watching.